Hey guys, can you remember the season finale of Agent Carter, Season 2, Episode 10, Hollywood Ending, and I was really looking forward to this episode. Even though last week's kind of disappointed me just a bit, it wasn't a terrible episode by any means. It was just Whitney's, me caring about Whitney, it just wasn't there as much as I wanted to be, but this really was an amazing finale, I gotta say. By far best episode of the season. I think right up there with last year's finale. This episode was intense, but it also had some really great, quiet character moments, which I also really enjoyed. There was some nice resolution this episode, and I do think that if the show doesn't get picked up for a third season, it doesn't hurt the show a ton. There is a huge thing in the last scene that I will get into, but if the show doesn't get renewed for a third season, I think they left enough things off where it's like, okay, I can kind of see where this goes, things like that. But let's just get in this episode. Um, because a lot did happen, obviously. And we start off in a really cool. I like the way this episode starts off because we basically start off where we know that Wilkes, of course, exploded and everything would happen, got the zero matter out of him. But we get to see what happened when that was going on. We see Thompson orders Samberly to fix the timer. The scientist shuts down the jammer. And when Peggy aims a gun at Thompson, he doesn't believe that she'll shoot him. And she says that used to be true, but it isn't now. And it really shows the character and just more. I don't really, just it really shows, how much the character has changed, and I think, how less worried Peggy is with these kind of things because she doesn't work for Thompson anymore, so it doesn't matter as much now, and basically, she orders him to put the timer down. Thompson refuses. A burst of energy sweeps over the group, and I thought that she was just gonna kill Thompson right then and there, but she doesn't. Thompson tells him that the detonator is still armed. They go inside. There's zero matter on the floor, and the gamma cannon is intact. And they find Wilkes buried in the rubble. Wilkes is not dead, and he realizes that he's all right. They figure that Wilkes expelled the zero matter from his body, and he gets to his feet. And basically, the zero matter moves across the floor toward where Whitney is buried in the rubble. She absorbs the zero matter, says that everything is where it belongs. Whitney advances on them, and Peggy says that they have to move because bullets won't stop Whitney. And they did a good job in this episode of showing that this villainous side of Whitney is not Whitney, it's the zero matter within her, which I like seeing. So the team heads to the car, discover that it's gone along with Samberly. Whitney comes after them and says that she knows where they're going. Jarvis and Howard ram her with Howard's car, and Samberly pulls up and apologizes for getting turned around. Everyone gets in the car, and they drive off as Whitney recovers. The team returns to headquarters, and Thompson gets Vega to give up all the agents on Master's payroll. And basically, in the lab, we see that Wilkes describes what he felt in the other dimension, and it felt like nothing. He didn't really feel like anything. So that's interesting. Howard's disappointed that there was nothing there because remember, he was, interested in seeing what Zero Matter was going to do. And Wilkes explains that Zero Matter consumed everything there. It was spread to their world by infecting it through Whitney, and basically Howard confirms that Wilkes is clean of Zero Matter, and Wilkes admits that with everything he's done, he's not sure that he can go back to his old life because he's been away from it for so long. He doesn't really know if he wants to go back to being this doctor, which is interesting. I thought it was a good direction to take Wilkes in because a lot of people said that Wilkes was not as compelling as a character as he could be, but now it kind of seems like that was intentional. Like it was supposed to be like Wilkes wasn't really that compelling because the fact that Zero Matter does virtually nothing to it makes you feel nothing, and it's very interesting. So Winnie's in her room putting paper on the wall, and Manfredi comes in, and I like the character of Manfredi in this episode because I was worried last week. Is Manfredi really just as evil? And it really seems here like he's not. He suggested they get something to eat, but Winnie says that she's going to open the door for the Zero Matter, and this time will stay open. And when a mobster puts a hand on her shoulder, Winnie brushes him off, warns him not to touch her when she's working. She goes back to work writing down formula on the paper, and Manfredi leaves. He meets with his mother Nona and wonders what to do now that Winnie's rejecting her, and Nona tells him to make Whitney mind her manners, but Joseph says that something has hold of Whitney, and he insists that he loves Whitney, and Nona tells her son to make a deal with the devil, and basically, he needs to kind of try to figure out what's going on with Whitney. So at the Stark estate, Howard, Wilkes, and Peggy are having lunch outside. Wilkes warns that even if they use the gamma can to separate Whitney from the Zero Matter will still be on Earth, and it's not going to make much of a difference. So Howard suggests that Wilkes create a new contaminate unit, and take the Zero Matter to Stark Labs, and Peggy points out that Howard is only in it for himself, and that's true. Howard always seems to benefit himself, and really that's just going to help him, so no, they're not going to do that. And Manfredi brings Jarvis out at gunpoint, and then Howard and Manfredi share a laugh and hug, and Wilkes explains that Manfredi helped Whitney capture him, and Manfredi admits that it was wrong. He holsters his gun, says that they're all worried about Whitney. They have lunch, and Manfredi asks them to save Whitney, and he insists that the Zero Matter is changing her. Like, this is not really Whitney. It's just the Zero Matter within her has turned her into this monster. And Wilkes insists that Whitney is consumed with a lust for power, and it's true. Manfredi explains that Whitney's writing down formulas and preparing to open the rift. And Wilkes figures that she figured out a way to do it without an atomic explosion, and Peggy suggests that they have to end it, that they have to do whatever they can to end this, and once for all by opening the rift, knocking out the Zero Matter out of Whitney, and send it back to its point of origin. So that's basically their plan. And Wilkes warns that it isn't that easy, that it's, and of course Wilkes would know since he was under the Zero Matter for as long as he was, and Howard suggested they steal Whitney's research and use it. Manfredi warns that Whitney never leaves her room. Peggy tells him that she'll have to give Whitney a reason to, and that's true. I mean, she's always been in that room. The entire season, she's been in that room and she hasn't left. Now, Peggy's got to give her a reason to get out of there. So that night, Manfredi goes to Whitney's room, finds her muttering over the formula. She tells him to leave her alone, and Manfredi says that he needs her help getting some information out of one of his guys, and Whitney realizes that he wants her to be his muscle, and she says that she'll help him. Manfredi goes out and gestures Peggy and Sousa back, and basically Manfredi brings one of his men, Hank, into the studio and tells him that he'll make it up to him. Whitney comes in, and Manfredi accuses him of working for his rival. Hank denies it, and Manfredi punches him, and Whitney offers to use her powers on Hank. And Peggy and Sousa then enter Whitney's room, take photos of the formulas as they work. Sousa takes a photo of Peggy as a souvenir for her, and he says that he's glad they got to work together. Peggy doesn't know what to say, and this entire episode, you can tell that Peggy and Sousa are just getting closer and closer, and I really like seeing that. I definitely like the chemistry between these two, but Peggy, we know, is still very conflicted because she still has these feelings for Wilkes, and she hasn't really made a choice between Sousa and Wilkes, and she really doesn't know what to do there. So Manfredi keeps beating Hank, who swears that he isn't a traitor, and Whitney says that she's going back to work, and Manfredi asks her to scare Hank with the Zero Matter, and exasperated, Whitney reaches for Hank. He says that he's cooperating with the feds because they threatened his family, and Manfredi's shocked to realize that Hank is actually a traitor, and I thought that was actually a really good twist that Manfredi didn't, Manfredi's never fully understood what's going on, and Winnie heads back to her room, and Manfredi goes after her, and then Peggy and Sousa hear Manfredi calling to Whitney. Sousa pauses to change one of the formulas, and the agent gets out the window just in time as Whitney comes in. She tells Manfredi not to interrupt her again, and goes back to work because, of course, like he said, she never leaves her room, so that did not work. So back at the SSR, Wilkes, Samberly, I keep saying Jason, it says Jason here, but his name is Wilkes. Wilkes, Samberly, and Howard examine the formula, arguing about what to call the machine. Winnie was creating to open the rift, and Howard warns the design is incredibly complex, but they don't know how to stop more Zero Matter from coming through. And Peggy flatters the three men, and they come up with the idea of using X-rays to contain the Zero Matter, and they need a large empty space, and Jarvis suggests they use the Stark Acres studio, and Wilkes says that Whitney will sense what they're doing, and they go back to work. They need to find a way to do this without Whitney knowing what they're doing, because if Whitney knows what they're doing, then obviously that's going to blow their cover, and it's not going to end well for them, and obviously they want to win. So, something else I really like about this episode is I really like how everyone really got in on the action. Like, all the people we've seen Peggy work with really got into this, and I like that. So later, Rose helps the scientists with their work, and Howard flirts with her, and as they work, Wilkes apologizes to Sousa, and I like this scene. I mean, it made sense why Wilkes wanted to apologize. I mean, Sousa knew there was something going on with Wilkes and Peggy, and Wilkes wanted to apologize for that, and the agent asks Wilkes to threaten Peggy instead of him, and Wilkes says that he realized that he knew Sousa would fold because he would have, and it's just a nice scene. I really did enjoy that. It didn't feel like, Wilkes was like, "Oh, I'm sorry I took your girl." It just seemed like Wilkes was like, "Look, I know that she was yours. I'm sorry about that. I know you had history." He definitely feels really upset about that, and I like seeing that. Just shows that Wilkes is a good man, and it also shows that Wilkes knows he can't really be competition between these two because Sousa just loves her too much, and they have too much of a history together. So meanwhile, Peggy asks Jarvis how Anna's feeling, and he says that his wife is fine. She can come home in a day or two. And I like that we got an update on Anna because I wasn't sure if this was just going to go away, but I'm glad we got an update here. And Jarvis tells his friend that he and Anna had a good cry about losing her ability to have children. And when he says that Anna's stronger than him, Peggy assures him that he may be the strongest of them all. And really sweet scene. I've always loved the bonding between Jarvis and Peggy. Just a really nice scene overall. I definitely like the way that was done. And you can tell that that he really is the strongest because he didn't tell her the truth. He didn't tell her what was going on, and he got through this. He was, because we didn't really know if Jarvis was going to get through what happened to Anna, but he got through it. He's already back to his comedic self, and that's really why he might be the strongest because while they all have some sort of power, like while Whitney has the zero matter, or while Peggy can kick ass and things like that, he's the strongest because he was able to deal with something life threatening. And the fact that he was able to get over it like he did, I really do agree with Peggy saying that. And a lot of what he does, he really uses with his humor. His humor really gets him through a lot of situations. And without that humor, he wouldn't be the man he really was. And I do agree with Peggy on that. And I really love the way that was done. So Thompson comes in, offers his help, and Peggy suggests that he get their dinner orders. And, the entire season, Thompson's tried to help them. He really hasn't been, though, because he's been working with Masters. And Thompson agrees. He goes back to his office to place an order by phone, then checks Masters' case, and inside is an Atlas Club pin, like the one that, and it seems like Masters is dead. It seemed like Whitney pretty much killed him. Inside is an Atlas Club pin, like the one that Dottie stole, and Jack discovers that it's a key. And basically, the next morning at the studio, the team sets up their equipment. Wilkes draws a no-go zone 20 from the generator and warns that when the rift closes, anything with the zone will be sucked in. Howard turns on the generator, and a contained rift opens, and it works, because in a room, Winnie senses the rift opening, and as they wait for Winnie to arrive, we see Howard practices a drive. Samberly checks the x-ray generators, and Thompson asks Peggy what her gut tells her about him. And I like this scene here. He figures that Peggy will turn him in for siding with Masters, and Peggy says the Masters took advantage of Jack's ambition, which is true. I mean, if you remember, this whole thing started with Masters telling Thompson, "Hey, I have this offer for you. If you're gonna be irrelevant in the SSR. It's no longer gonna be a thing. It's gonna be irrelevant soon, and this job will just, it'll be better for you. You'll be more consumed with power." And that's what happened with Thompson. He didn't realize he was on the wrong side, and he was told to do things because he thought he would get the upper hand, and of course he didn't. And she tells him that he's a good man at heart, and she gives Thompson the key pin. It's a good scene because, just before it seemed like she was going to kill him, but now she's really starting to understand Thompson. He's never been a bad guy. He's just listened to the wrong side, and he played the wrong side, and now he's on the right side because he realizes he can't trust Masters, and then Masters are working with Whitney, obviously, and he says they'll have to figure out what it opens together. And I like seeing that because I always thought Thompson was gonna be like the villain of this season. That's the direction they were gonna take him in. But I like that he's now on their side. It works well for his character, and I like seeing that. And it also works well for Peggy. She now has no animosity with Thompson. Like, there's no more of tension. There's no more of Thompson trying to jeopardize Peggy in the workplace. There's no more of that, and I like seeing that. So Samberly's adjusting the generator. Whitney comes up behind him. She walks past him to the rift, and Samberly screams. And Peggy hears him, but the scientist doesn't respond on the radio. Sousa spots Whitney heading for the rift and warns the others. Whitney approaches the rift, and Howard fires the gamma cannon at her. The zero matter leaves her body and enters the rift, which that was huge. And she screams in frustration. And you can really tell that this is her scream because she realizes she's losing her power. And what's the one thing that Whitney's wanted? Power. And we know that from, of course, her origin, pretty much. And Thompson handcuffs her, takes her to the car with Sousa, and she's put under arrest. Howard tells Peggy that the radio controller isn't responding, and of course, as Wilkes said, this is far from the end of this. Howard suggests they use the manual override to shut down the generator, but the crank is on the device. Whoever shuts it down will be in the danger zone when the rift closes, and Peggy volunteers, but Howard says that it's his device and his design flaw. So Wilkes, Thompson, and Jarvis all volunteer as well. but Sousa ties a power cable around his chest and goes in, and the team watches as Sousa approaches the generator, and the cable is just long enough, and this scene was crazy. Sousa struggles to turn the crank, and Peggy suggests they detonate the gamma can inside the rift. You literally see all of them holding on for their dear life on this rope, because if any of them just let go of that cable, I mean, Sousa's a goner, and Jack warns that Sammerly took the explosives out. Jarvis runs off. The matter in the zone starts rising into the rift. The cable comes unchained and Peggy grabs it. The others grab her and Sousa hangs in midair. He tells Peggy to let go, but she refuses, and we see Jarvis and Sammerly drive up. Jarvis says that they'll drive Howard's hover car into the rift with the gamma cannon inside. Howard tells Sammerly to get the core out of the gamma cannon, and Jarvis puts it in the car's front seat. He then lights the gas tank, starts the engine, the car flies into the rift, and the core explodes, the rift closes. Sousa drops to the ground, and Peggy and Sousa look at each other for a moment, and then Sousa passes out. And I love Sammerly's line where he's like, "I'm gonna pass out." I thought that was pretty funny, but luckily, they were able to take down the Zero Matter. And what I loved about this is that Peggy really had an established team here. Not that she didn't last year, but she had so many people against her, and it really shows how far she's come. No one really is threatened by her anymore. No one really thinks of her as, she doesn't really, she's not really threatened by anyone. No one really is making fun of her. Because if you remember the way the show started out, I mean, she really wasn't respected as a woman, and now she really is. Everyone sees what she's capable of. I think that's one of the reasons why Thompson is allying with her, because he really sees what she's capable of. That's why he always tried to dethrone her, I think, because he always thought that, oh, she's just a woman, she's not really that powerful. But now he sees that they're able to take down Zero Matter, and they're able to do this. That's really, I think, what awakened Thompson, and I love seeing that. Thought that was very strong. And of course, I love characters like Samberly, Rose. Great to see them in on the action. I just really love the way the scene was done, and it wasn't just Peggy. I like that it wasn't just Peggy that took Whitney down. It really was all of them. They all contributed, and I really like that. It's just some, like I said, really nice, quiet character moments really worked in this episode, and I definitely really like that. So later at the Stark estate, Peggy and Howard argue over what to do with the technology because they know how dangerous it is, and Wilkes comes in, and Howard says he expects him in the office the next Monday, and the scientist explains that he's starting a new project, and he wants Wilkes to head it. As we know, Wilkes didn't really know what to do, but now I like that Howard and him might be working on this together, and we know we're not going to see Wilkes next season probably, so it's a good way to be like, okay, this is what Wilkes is going to do. Peggy offers her congratulations, and Howard goes for a swim, and I love Howard's line where it's like, you could join me, but a bathing suit's too expensive. I thought that was pretty funny. It just shows that Howard's always going to be sort of selfish. And Wilkes asks if Peggy's heading back to New York. She says that dwelling on what might have been is no way to live. And the scientist points out that they never had more than half a dance and figures that it's better than nothing. And it's true. I mean, I think they just realized that they had a one-time thing. They were on a first date, and that's really all they had. And that's it. I think he always will have feelings for Peggy, but I think he knows that they just had a thing. They had a short thing, and in reality, Peggy and Sousa, that's who are meant to be together. He knows that. It's kind of sad, but Peggy knows that as well, and it's a good moment for them. I thought it was a good way to close out that relationship. I like the way that that was done, and they did a good job of not making it too intense. Again, small character moments, that's what makes the show so great, and I really love that. So Jarvis brings Anna home as Peggy prepares to leave, and Anna asks if she was going to leave without saying goodbye, and she says that she thought Anna might not want to see her after what happened, and Anna hugs her, and Jarvis offers to take Peggy wherever she wants to go, but is shocked when Peggy says that she's already called for a taxi, and the agent says that Jarvis should stay in with his wife, and he goes inside, and I thought this was really great. Jarvis doesn't always need to be there for Peggy, and we've seen before that she doesn't really need him, and she wants him to have this life with Anna. She sees how happy he is, and Anna begs Peggy to let Jarvis take care of her. She'll never hear the end of it, and when she calls to Jarvis, he runs right out, and that's Jarvis's character. He'll always want to help Peggy, even if she doesn't want it, and I love that. Very funny stuff. But I do think that Jarvis is going to be with Anna. I do think Anna's going to go with Jarvis, hopefully. We'll have to see what's going on there. I hope if we do see Anna next season, because I really liked her character. I think they worked very well together, and it was good to see Jarvis's wife. I definitely like that. So in Insane Asylum, Whitney imagines Chadwick returning, promising that together they'll reunite her with the Zero Matter, and Manfredi watches from the door window holding Rose. The orderly warns that Whitney will use them to claw her face open, and the man lets Manfredi in, and he calls to his beautiful girl, and it's really sad for Whitney. I mean, she's kind of lost everyone. She had all these allies, and now she really doesn't have anyone. And I mean, I can't blame her. Obvious. I mean, I can't really, be upset because obviously the zero matter within her got her to this. But it's just a sad way to end for her. Honestly, it's really sad, and it's basically as bad as dying. I mean, it pretty much says that Whitney's gonna probably kill herself at some point. Manfredi will always love her, I think, but I think he knows that he can't really get her back because now it seems like she's just crazy. Like, now that she doesn't have the power within her, she's imagining things, and I think he wants to get her back to who she once was, but that's not who she is anymore, and he knows that, and he knows he can't really do anything about it, which is really sad. So Jarvis drops Peggy off the SSR headquarters. She says that she has paperwork to finish, and he points out that LA has agreed with Peggy and wonders if she has to go back to New York. And the butler admits that he has grown fond of certain elements of the city, which I thought was pretty funny, like the driving, things like that. If you remember, he was upset about LA, things like that. But Peggy says that her life is in New York, and Jarvis suggests that she might need one compelling reason to stay. And we know what that reason is. We see that in the SSR office, Sousa and Peggy finish closing the case. He points out that Peggy's actions at the rift were ill-advised and reckless, and she risked the world to save his life. I love Peggy's reaction where she was just like, "Reckless? How dare you?" I thought that was really funny. And Peggy is Strickland speechless for a second, but then her and Sousa, they start making out, and you can tell that these two are definitely going to be together. And I really like the way they ended things off there. I mean, we always knew that Sousa was going to be Peggy's love interest. I mean, even though she had that thing with Wilkes, we pretty much knew that Sousa was going to be her love interest. I love the way they explored that. They did a very good job with showing off Sousa and Peggy and why they should be together. And I really like that. I mean, after that one scene they had, you knew that these two are pretty much going to be together. Love the way that that ended, and very good to see them happy. But when we think the show is going to end off on a happy note, we see Thompson is in his hotel room packing to leave. There's a knock at the door. He answers the door. A man just shoots him in the chest with a silenced gun. He takes Master's files and leaves, and that's how the episode ends. So clearly someone wants Thompson's, position. We don't really know who it is, but holy shit, someone just shot Thompson. I mean, I can't really get over that. It's pretty crazy. Apart from that, this really did feel like a series finale, I gotta say. You can tell this definitely felt like a series finale. Although Thompson does mention though that Peggy is taking vacation time, he doesn't actually say the words, that she's leaving for good. He says she's taking vacation time. But yeah, guys, like I said, I don't know if the show is coming back for a season 3. I gotta say, I don't know if it's coming back, but I like the way that most of this ended, like Peggy and Sousa now being back together. Is Jarvis gonna go with Peggy to L.A., or is he gonna stay in L.A., or is he going back with her to New York? I'm not really sure. We'll have to see what's going on there. We don't really know where Jarvis is headed next season, or if we see Jarvis again. Whitney, it pretty much seems like is just gonna die. Like she's gonna end up, I'm pretty sure, killing herself. That's what it seemed like they were gonna. That's where it seems like they were headed. At least I like seeing Howard and Wilkes working together. It does make me think that if we see Howard next season, we're gonna see Wilkes as well, which I'm looking forward to definitely. My big thing is, like I said, I don't know if the show is coming back for a second season or not. They haven't had the greatest ratings. Haley Atwell does have a show on ABC, but it hasn't been greenlighted yet. So that's the thing. Her show has not been greenlighted, and if it's not greenlighted, then maybe Agent Carter will come back. If it is, though, I'm pretty sure that just tells us that Agent Carter's not coming back for a season 3, which I can understand why it's not. I mean, this really was a great season. There were a lot of things that were better than last season. Was it as good as last season? I don't know. I do think last season was just a little bit better, just like the spy element, things like that. But what I really loved about the season is that it really was telling the story of two women who were both very powerful in different ways, and one ended up with nothing, one ended up with everything, and I really liked the way that that story was told. They did a very good job at telling a very different story than they did in season 1, and I really liked that. Of course, the LA element was very good here. The comedy was great. I like the new characters we were introduced to. They did a very good job at having some very compelling new characters. I like the way that that was done. the dynamic with Peggy and everyone, they always did a great job of that. Haley Atwell, I think, just has perfect chemistry with really everyone in this cast. Everyone she works with, she just works really well with. I don't think there's a single person in this cast that Haley Atwell does not work well with. She really works well, I think, with everyone. Really, I think that's what it comes down to with that. I love the closure of, like I said, with Wilkes. Her and Wilkes just didn't work out as well as they wanted to. It's clear that Wilkes wanted more, but he knows that she loves Sousa. That's who she wants to be with, and he respects that, and I like that. I just thought they gave really good closure to everyone. Overall, I really did love this finale. There is this cliffhanger with Thompson, but it doesn't. I mean, it's a big cliffhanger, obviously, because someone took the files, and we don't really know where that came from. But apart from that, we didn't really have a cliffhanger. And here's the thing. We had a cliffhanger in season 1, and it had nothing to do with the rest of this season. I'm trying to remember what it was exactly. We had a cliffhanger, if you guys remember, though, in season 1, and it never came up in season 2. So, I mean, this is a bigger of a deal because a character was shot and possibly killed, which I'm pretty sure that Jack is dead. I don't know if he's dead, but, yeah, if you remember Ivchenko and then Zola, we had that whole thing last year. We still didn't get to that. So is that going to happen next season? I don't know. We'll have to see. But is this show going to get a season 2? I don't know. That's really my big thing. I don't know if this show is going to get a season 2. A season 3. I want to hope that the show is going to get a season 3. But after this season, I really don't know. Like I said, they haven't had the greatest ratings. It's kind of like Gallivant, where I don't need it to have a season 3 necessarily. Even though there was a big cliffhanger, I don't need it to have a season 3, but it'd be awesome if it did, because it's a great show. I really did enjoy this season, and it's a really good way to tie you over till Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They did a very good job with that. And of course, I'm really looking forward to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s return next week. That promo they had at the end of the episode was awesome, I gotta say. Really awesome stuff. I can't wait for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to come back. I can't believe it's coming back, and I can't believe the season is over, even though the season ended 1 week later than it should have. I mean, really crazy stuff overall. And the fact that we've had 2-hour episodes, I was expecting another episode, and of course I didn't get one because it was the finale. But overall, guys, let me know what you guys thought of this finale. I thought this was pretty much a near perfect finale. I really did love this season. Apart from last week's episode, this really was a great season in my opinion. I really did love pretty much everything about this season. Let me know what you guys saw this season. Love to hear your thoughts on it, and we'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for American Crime Story, The People vs. O.J. Simpson, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.